Okay, let's dive into a clinical puzzle that I know we all face, probably more often than we'd like. But for this explainer, we're going to put aside the usual biochemical markers for a minute. We're going to look at the failing heart through a totally different lens. Not as a chemical problem, but as a problem of pure physics. Let's get into it.
So picture this. It's a scene you've probably encountered a dozen times this month. You have a patient, maybe a bit older, with a history of metabolic syndrome, and they're in your clinic complaining of shortness of breath. You do the workup, run the labs, and the NT-proBNP comes back at 450.
And here it is, the million-dollar question. What do you do with this number? I mean, it's totally ambiguous. Is this a primary lung issue, or are we looking at the very first signs of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction? The truth is, our standard toolkit just doesn't give us a clear answer here.
This slide just lays out our daily dilemma perfectly, doesn't it? The NT-proBNP is stuck in that diagnostic gray zone. The echo comes back, shows an EF of 55%, which is great. It tells us the pump is still squeezing well. But, and this is the big but, it tells us absolutely nothing about the underlying mechanical stress or stiffness of the heart muscle. Add in the vague symptoms, and well, we're left flying blind right in that critical early window where we could actually make a difference.
So, to solve this, we need to take a big step back. Let's stop thinking about the heart as just a chemical factory that's pumping out peptides and start looking at it for what it is, a physical material, a pump that has a mechanical limit.
I want you to think about the myocardium like a brand new rubber band. In a healthy heart, it's in an elastic state. You stretch it during diastole when it's filling, and it just snaps right back with force during systole. All that energy is conserved, making for a super efficient pump. But under chronic stress, from hypertension, metabolic disease, it gets stretched too far for too long. It starts to act like an old, overstretched rubber band and enters a plastic state. And that's bad news because the deformation is permanent and energy is lost as heat and damage with every single beat.
And this change from elastic to plastic, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in stages. We start in the Hookean stage. That's just healthy, linear elasticity. But as the stress continues, the heart eventually reaches the yield point. This is the critical threshold. It's that exact moment the rubber band is stretched to its absolute limit. Once you go past this point, you're in the plastic stage. That's where non-recoverable, permanent remodeling begins. Our entire goal with this new approach is to find that yield point before the damage becomes irreversible.
Now, if you zoom way into the molecular level, this whole property is run by this incredible protein called titin. You can think of it as a tiny microscopic spring inside each heart muscle cell. And what's amazing is the heart is constantly fine-tuning its own stiffness by changing the ratio of long, stretchy titin isoforms to shorter, stiffer ones. In a failing heart, that ratio gets slammed towards the stiffer isoforms, making the ventricle rigid, inefficient, and pushing it ever closer to that dangerous yield point.
So if the heart is physically changing, if it's getting stiffer, can we actually detect that? Well, the answer is yes, we can actually hear it. The heart develops a distinct acoustic signature as it approaches its mechanical breaking point.
By using some pretty advanced signal processing, we can listen very closely to the first heart sound, S1. In a healthy, compliant heart, the sound energy is really tight and compact. But as that heart wall stiffens under pressure, the energy spreads out across a much wider range of frequencies. We call this spectral broadening, and it's basically the direct acoustic fingerprint of a heart under serious mechanical stress.
And the physics here is actually incredibly simple and elegant. You see, the heart's natural resonant frequency is just a function of its mass and its stiffness. So as the wall stiffness, that's the K in this equation, goes up, the resonant frequency has to shift higher. It's the exact same reason a tight guitar string has a higher pitch than a loose one. We are literally hearing the heart go out of tune as it's being stressed.
Now, besides that spectral broadening, we're listening for two other critical clues. First, the S3 gallop. That classic low-frequency thud of blood crashing into a stiff, non-compliant ventricle. Second, we measure something called the electromechanical activation time, or EMAT. This is simply the delay between the electrical spark, the QRS complex, and the actual mechanical event of the mitral valve slamming shut. A longer EMAT means the ventricle is struggling. It's taking more and more time to build up enough pressure to even start pumping. Okay, so each of these signals is pretty powerful on its own. But the real diagnostic magic happens when we fuse them together into a single dynamic index that tells us exactly how much mechanical capacity the heart has left in the tank.
And that's exactly what the Starling Reserve Index, or SRI, does. It blends these physical parameters into one seriously powerful score. As you can see, it combines three things:
the intensity of that S3 gallop, which is a sign of volume overload, the ratio of that pre-ejection struggle time to the actual pumping time, and of course, that acoustic fingerprint of stiffness, the spectral broadening. Altogether, they give us a real number that quantifies the heart's remaining mechanical reserve.
And just look at the impact. This chart shows data from those exact gray zone patients we started with. Using NT-proBNP alone, our diagnostic accuracy for acute heart failure is basically a coin flip, only 47%. But when you add in these acoustic markers, it jumps all the way up to 69%. That is a huge improvement in diagnostic clarity, right where we need it the most.
So let's circle back to our patient. Her NT-proBNP was ambiguous, her EF was normal, but her SRI score comes back critically high. Her heart is audibly stiff, it is struggling to build pressure, and it is showing clear signs of volume overload. The physics gives us the definitive answer her chemistry couldn't. This is early-stage heart failure, period.
Now, getting that definitive answer isn't just about making the diagnosis. It's about changing our entire approach to treatment. It's about moving from being reactive to being truly proactive and precise.
This is the paradigm shift I'm talking about. Right now, our care is reactive. We wait for a patient to gain 5 pounds or tell us they can't breathe. Those are late signals. SRI monitoring, on the other hand, can detect the underlying mechanical stress 7 to 14 days before the first symptom even appears. This opens up this crucial pre-symptomatic window where we can act. We can move from just telling them to take a diuretic to something called precision diuresis, where we titrate their therapy based on the heart's actual physical state, not just a number on a scale. We can literally prevent the crisis before it ever begins.
And the utility of this goes way beyond the initial diagnosis. I mean, think about our cardio-oncology patients. We could spot cardiotoxicity weeks or even months before the ejection fraction ever drops. Or after a TAVR procedure, we can actually watch the ventricle's mechanical recovery in real time as the EMAT gets shorter. For the millions of patients with metabolic syndrome, it finally unmasks that subclinical dysfunction that our biochemical markers miss completely. It's really a tool for monitoring mechanical health across the board.
Now, here's where things get even more advanced. A healthy heart is adaptable, it's complex, its mechanical response changes subtly with every single beat. But as it fails, it loses that complexity. It becomes rigid, brittle, and frankly predictable. This state is called decomplexification, and it is the definitive tipping point just before a major crisis hits.
And to detect something that subtle, you need a new level of intelligence. That's where physics-informed neural networks, or PINs, come into play. See, a standard AI might just find random correlations in data, but a PIN is different. It has been taught the fundamental laws of hemodynamics. So it doesn't just see patterns, it understands the physics of blood flow and pressure. This allows it to recognize that dangerous loss of complexity and predict an impending crisis with incredible accuracy.
So how does this look in daily practice? It's designed to be seamless. A simple wearable sensor captures the data 24/7. The AI calculates the SRI in real time. If that index starts to trend up, indicating the mechanical reserve is dropping, the system sends a clinical alert. This lets us step in on rounds with a simple medication adjustment days before that patient would have landed themselves in the emergency room.
Honestly, the best way to think about this is as an eGFR for the heart. For decades, we've used the eGFR to track the slow, progressive decline in kidney function. The SRI finally gives us a similar tool for the heart, a simple, standardized, quantitative number that lets us track the progression of chronic mechanical disease over years.
So let me just leave you with this thought. What if we could fundamentally change our entire goal? What if we could move beyond just managing heart failure crises and instead focus on preserving the heart's mechanical function over a patient's lifetime? What if we could predict and prevent those crises weeks in advance just by listening to the physics of the pump?
And of course, a paradigm shift like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. A huge thanks is due to the entire team at AutoCore Cardiometrics. Their foundational research in this field is what's making this new future of proactive, precision cardiology a reality.